Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Amy here. Today we're gonna wrap up September. I read 13 / listened to some of them, probably most of them. I do a lot of listening. I love a good audiobook. But anyway, the first one I started off the month with, and I did include this, I think this was in my hurricane vlog as well, so I talk a little bit more in depth about it there, but this is Before I Go to Sleep. This is by S.J. Watson. This one started out really good for me, in my opinion. I was really engrossed in it. I was really fascinated by it. So we follow a middle-aged woman who endured an accident where every night when she goes to sleep, like her brain is just wiped clean, and when she wakes up the next morning, she doesn't remember anything except for like back to when maybe she was a young girl or a teenager, early 20s kind of thing, but she doesn't recall anything else, who she's married to, if she has any kids. She doesn't know anything. Think of 50 First Dates with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore, but not a happy love story at all. This is definitely a mystery thriller. There's some suspicious characters, there's some suspicious things going on in here. She does keep a journal. I had to pay very close attention to what was happening because it was hard to tell from just listening to the book. I do not have a copy of this, where we were at. We go back and forth between like real time and journal entries, and then it gets kind of confusing. So I do recommend, even though the narration was good for this book, I recommend you read it with your eyeballs, because I think you will get a better perspective of the story, because it has so many parts to it, kind of getting all the clues from journal entries and just past experiences. She even talks about past journal entries. It can get a little bit confusing. But yes, lots of suspicious people, lots of suspicious things happening. She wakes up every morning, of course, to a man, and she doesn't know who he is, so she has to like remind herself through her notes or journal entries that this is her husband. But yet she can't tell her husband that she's making a journal. She can't tell her husband that she's actually seeing like a psychiatrist. So there's something fishy about that. I was really into it in the beginning. It kind of started to drag a little bit for me in the middle. Wasn't sure where we were going with this book. I did appreciate the whole twist of everything and the ending, but I had a lot of questions and concerns about just certain scenarios that went on in the book, and I don't know. It was good. Like I said, it dragged for me a little bit towards the middle. The ending little twist was very good, but again, lots of questions about it. This is more, I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads, but I would say this is more like a 3.5 star, because I really did enjoy it. I really did like the fascinating story of her losing her memory. Again, questions, lots of questions about the story. Then I picked up Stripped. This is by K.M. Newhold. This is part of the Four Bears Construction series. I believe this is book 6. Yes, this is book 6. So this is Miller and Dimitri's story. Again, I read this during my hurricane vlog. I'll link that vlog down below if you want to go check it out and hear all my thoughts about all these books, like when they were fresh in my mind. But in this story, we meet Miller, who is fairly new to the Four Bears Construction. Miller is a trans man, just looking for love, basically. He's very fun and outgoing. I really enjoyed this character. I really enjoyed his personality. He has a thing for like professors, teachers, nerdy guys. He runs across Dimitri, who is a college professor, I believe, who likes to knit cozy sweaters for his pet tortoise, which is absolutely adorable. So the story is just typical Four Bears, K.M. Newhold writing. It was just fun and fluffy, no drama, no angst. It was just a fun, lighthearted read of Dimitri and Miller getting to know each other, exploring each other and what each other like. Not my favorite Four Bears Construction book, but I still gave it 5 stars because it was just absolutely adorable. I loved it. Okay, I picked up File M for Murder. This is by Miranda James. This is A Cat in the Stacks Mysteries. This is like book 3 in the whole series. I started reading it like a while ago, like a couple years back, and I really enjoyed the first 2 books, and then I kind of got out of cozy mysteries. And I picked them up. I'm still not quite fully into them, which is why this book took me so long to read. I'm sad to say that it took me the whole month to read this book because it just wasn't what I wanted. I kept picking up other books and putting this one to the side, but I did finish it. It wasn't that I didn't like it at all. I absolutely loved it, thought it was adorable. I think I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads. Once again, more of like a 3.5 star. So we follow Charlie. Charlie is, I believe he's like sort of like a retired librarian, although he kind of works part-time at a library, and then he works part-time at a school doing archives and things. And he has a lovely cat named Diesel, who is a Maine Coon, which are very big cats. So we hear all about Diesel in the books. Him and Diesel, they solve murders. So in this book, his daughter, Laura, comes home from Hollywood, where she is like kind of getting into being an actress. I think she might have just been in some plays. She dated a playwright, Arthur, or whatever you call it. And they didn't have the best relationship. Although she really did care for him, in the end they broke up because he's a piece of work, let me just say that. But anyway, he follows her home to Athena, Mississippi is where this takes place. So yeah, lots of Southern charm as well in this book. It was just sweet and fun, you know, nothing highly dramatic about this book. The ending was pretty anticlimactic. I pretty much knew, you know, figured out who the killer was. This one so far, even though it's just my 3rd book in the series, isn't my favorite one, and I think that's another reason why it took me so long to pick up. Not just because I'm not in the cozy mystery mood. It just wasn't. It wasn't like pulling me in. Like, I did enjoy the story, and I enjoyed Charlie and Diesel, and the writing, the way the story played out. Although I do feel like it was a little bit too long at some parts. You know, sometimes I was just like, can we just get to the murder? I don't know, but anyway, it was fun. I am gonna continue the series. I am gonna eventually pick up the 4th book in the series, just not right now. I'm not ready for cozy mysteries right now. I want all the spookiness, all the terrifying thrillers and horrors and things that go bump in the night kind of mood. And then, of course, I read Hunting the Merman. This is by Aramis Jordan. I just recently got this copy from Amazon just to support Aramis, but I did receive the ARC for this book. I absolutely loved it. I think this one I liked better than the first one, which is Escaping the Merman, but I really did like that one as well. In this one, we follow Captain Christian and Tarlis. Tarlis is our merman. We meet Captain Christian in the first book because he is aboard the ship, well, Fernando's ship. It is Fernando's ship, and Christian is the captain. Christian was described in here as like a Thor type character, which is super sexy. And then we have Tarlis, which is this very sort of feminine type merman, is what I got the vibe of Tarlis. He's beautiful, long, silky, like black hair. Christian and Tarlis have a bit of a hate to love sort of relationship. In the beginning, there's very much hatred on Christian's part because of what Tarlis did to him, although it was very pleasurable for Christian, and he can't stop thinking about it, can't stop thinking about Tarlis. So he goes on a mission to find Tarlis and capture him and sort of pay him back for what he's done, for what Tarlis has done to Christian, which in my opinion, was super hot. But anyway, it's very, very steamy, lots and lots of sexy times. This is more on the fantasy side of a male-male romance that involves Merman. But I advise to keep an open mind and give it a shot. I do think you should read the first book in order to fully appreciate our characters in this book, but you can probably jump into this one as a standalone. It says on the back, Hunting the Merman is a dark enemies to lovers romance. It features an intense love story and plenty of steam. That's it in a nutshell. Next up, I picked up another book in the Vino and Veritas series. This is Book Lover. This was number 6 in the series. This is Jamie and Briar's story. Two very super sweet guys, one with a little bit of a troubled past, and then one who's kind of like your boy next door. So Jamie grew up on a dairy farm with a loving family. He's our kind of boy next door. He loves to read. He loves books. He wants to be a librarian. Being a dairy farmer is not his dream. So we have a little bit of drama there as far as like family issues with what you know, he wants to pursue in life. Yet his father is, you know, trying to get him to stay on the dairy farm. And then we have Briar, who's had a little bit of a troubled past and is just trying to make a life for himself and you know, keep the past in the past. So he works at the bookstore part of Vino and Veritas, and he loves to read as well. He loves male romances. So he starts a book club at the store. And that's where him and Jamie meet, and that's where kind of our story between the two begin. But as they get to know each other, like different scenarios kind of get in their way. But it's a very sweet story. I really enjoyed it. This is by J.E. Burke. Very new to me author. Never read anything by this author, but I really did enjoy the story. We have just a little bit of drama, some issues coming back to haunt Briar from his past, but it just kind of kept the story interesting. I had a good time with it. I'm anxious to keep going with this series, and I did listen to this on audio. They're all available on Scribd, so if you have Scribd, the audios are fantastic. So far I've loved the narration to all of these. Then I picked up 56 Days. This is by Catherine Ryan Howard, by the way. This was the book troop pick for the month of September. I liked this book, but I have a few issues with it myself, which I'm not going to get into because it will, you know, contain spoilers. But basically we have a couple that just meet right before the pandemic starts. So this does involve the COVID pandemic, although I don't feel like it was more in the background. I don't feel like it was a very big part of the story, which it honestly really wasn't. Towards the end, when we get to the end and when we get to the nitty-gritty of things, that's not what the story is about. It just takes place during the pandemic. So we follow Sierra and Oliver throughout the book. We do kind of get overlapping stories from each of them, because when Sierra's telling a story on like her part of the story, then we get Oliver's point of view of that same story. So we're kind of hearing the same story again, which that doesn't bother me because I like to get the perspectives from another person. I kind of like that. But I do advise pay very close attention to the timelines, because we're flopping from all kinds of days. We go from like, you know, 56 days to when they met, and then we go back to like 70 something days, and then we jump to like 35 days. So just pay very close attention to the timelines. I did listen to this on audio, which I did enjoy the audio, but I had to read along with my eyes because I kind of lost track. I was like, wait, where are we again? And what is happening? So this is basically a story of past mistakes and revenges. So that's why we're kind of going back like 70 so many days, like 76, 79 days, I don't really remember. And we're going back to Sierra's side of the story, and finding out, you know, what brings her to this day 56, I guess, and starts the story on, and how she meets Oliver. And then of course we get Oliver's point of the story. We don't really get much of his past story until more of the end. And then we also get today. Where we're following a detective. I don't remember her name, because there is a dead body involved. So yeah, so we're kind of leading to current events, but we're going back and forth between 56 days, 35 days, 79 days, 60 something days. It can get confusing. I gave this 3 stars, even though I did enjoy it. I enjoyed getting the perspectives of everybody in this story. The ending was fairly good. I really did enjoy the little twist we have at the end. I'm kind of getting off track, but anyway, Sierra and Oliver basically form a relationship, or they're kind of in the beginning of like dating and having a relationship when the pandemic starts, and they decide to move in together when it's, you know, when quarantine happens. And then of course you have the dead body. You don't know who it is, so there's the mystery. But yeah, it was overall I really enjoyed it. Narration's really good if you do want to listen along as well as read it. About a 3.5 star for me. Okay, His and Hers by Alice Feeney. Wow, 5 stars. 5 stars. It's been a while since I gave a good thriller a 5 star. I was super impressed by this book. I couldn't put it down, couldn't stop listening. I did listen to this one as well. The narration is phenomenal. We get a narrator for each of our characters, for him and for her. So that's basically who we're following. We have chapters. Our chapters are titled Him and Her. Her is Anna Andrews. She is a BBC news anchor woman, I believe. She used to be a journalist, and then one of the women, news women or whatever, like went on maternity leave, and she stepped up and went into this position. And then we follow her ex-husband, which is Detective Chief Inspector Jack Harper. But what I enjoyed the entire time is trying to figure out who did what, who did it. A woman ends up dead in the beginning, and as the book goes on, we have more killings along the way. There's a little squirrel distracting me in the bushes in front of my house. He's cute. He's distracting me though. So we have some murders taking place. We don't know what's going on. It sounds like it can be Anna, and it sounds like it can be Jack. We have some timelines here as well. We get stories from Anna's past. We get stories, perspective of both Anna and Jack, of, their relationship, how they met, what happened to their relationship. But then the clincher is that we get this narration from these chapters in italic. We don't know who it is. The narrator in the audiobook has a voiceover, so you can't tell if it's a man or a woman. Highly recommend the audio. Highly recommend the audio. It was fantastic. Like I said, it kept me on my toes. It kept me guessing, who the heck is this person in italics? And then we get, when we finally get to the end, holy smokes, I was like blown away. I never would have expected this person. Never. 5 stars. If you follow my flow of reading, you'll know that I read like in thrillers, and then I go to male romances, because it's kind of like I need to have like a buffer sometimes in between books. If it's like not that good of a book, I need a buffer to kind of get me back on track. If it's a really good book and had me on the edge of my seat, I need a buffer to kind of bring me down. So I flip-flop from like thriller, horror to male romances. So back to male romances is the point of this story. I started, this is Crushing on Him. This is like the prequel to Scoring with Him. This is by Lauren Blakely. So this is a very, very short story. This is basically Grant's story. We're introduced to Grant and just his love of baseball and being gay in the profession. He doesn't, you know, he wants to go into it like everyone knowing that he's a gay man. But it's just his story from his time through high school leading up to the major leagues. And then we start Scoring with Him, which is the first book in the Men of Summer series by Lauren Blakely. Y'all, this was so good. Oh my goodness. If you have not picked it up, I highly recommend it. I do recommend the prequel as well, because you get to know a little bit about Grant and you get to feel the feel of his character. And I fell in love with Grant in the prequel. So going into this, I was already in love with one character. And then in this book, we get to know Declan Steele. He is a Major League Baseball player. He's very popular. He's an out gay sports Major League Baseball player. And Grant has really been like kind of following him and kind of just admired him from a distance. So they meet when Grant makes his way as a Major League Baseball player, and he ends up on the same team as Declan. So so he's a rookie, and Declan kind of takes him under his wing. They become friends, they get to know each other, and one thing leads to another. But it kind of starts off as like, because Grant's never been with a man. He has kissed a boy in his past, but he's never really been with a man, never really had a relationship or just had that, you know, passion or felt anything for anybody else until he meets Declan, of course. So Declan decides he's gonna give him some pointers, and those pointers extend to very, very steamy, hot, sexy times, if you know what I'm saying. So Declan only has one rule. He's always said never fall for another baseball player, especially someone on, you know, the same team as the team you're playing on. But it happens. This book does leave us with a nice cliffhanger. I haven't started the second book in the series yet. It is on its way though. But I was just like, whew, I need more of this in my life. This was like, the story was fantastic, the heat, and there wasn't a lot of drama, but there was just kind of drama between Declan and Grant not being able to truly be with each other. Even though they were both out openly gay men, they had to keep their relationship a secret, and the story kind of, you know, builds off of that. It's so good. I don't even know how to explain this book, except that it's one of my favorite male romances of the year so far. Then I kept on rolling. I started The End Zone. This is by Riley Hart. This is the second book in the Atlanta Lightning series by Riley Hart. I read the first book last month, I believe, which was Anston and Wes's story. Anston and Darren. Darren is Anston's best friend. They are NFL players. Love me some sports romances, y'all. If you know me, you know me. I love me some sports romances. And then we also meet Jeremy in the first book. Jeremy is Wes's best friend. So the second book is Darren and Jeremy's story. They sort of come together at the beginning of the book at an event that's taking place. I don't want to say too much to give away the events of the first book if you have not read it yet. But Jeremy and getting all these names mixed up in my head. Jeremy and Darren form this great friendship between the two of them. Darren considers himself straight, but then he starts to have these like feelings that he can't really put a finger on about Jeremy. He feels like it's more just like good friend kind of feelings, just wants to like protect him because Jeremy is kind of going through maybe some relationship problems. Not going to get into much of that. You really need to read the first one to know what's happening in the second one. They're coming together. Their friendship is pretty much the main part of the book. It just flows well. It doesn't have any drama, kind of like the first book had with Anston not being out, never being with a man before. He's just focusing on his career, and he doesn't want to hurt his career. Darren's just more open. He's just a very fun, open character, and I really appreciated his character, and I really just appreciated the relationship that he formed with Jeremy. There is one scene in this book that really like topped the cake for me. I mean, it was just a kind of, they were on the phone with each other. I don't want to give it away. Read the book. It's very good, but I do recommend reading the first one before you get to the second one. But I loved it. 5 stars. So then I picked up I Know You Know by Jillian McMillan. I really enjoyed this book. There's a podcast in here, so a podcast within a book. I did have some issues with it. Some things that just didn't make sense to me and just didn't flow well, I feel, in the story. I just have questions. I have lots of questions. I didn't like the ending. I didn't like how everything like panned out. But I did overall enjoy the story. We're following Cody Swift. Cody Swift was friends with 2 young boys that were brutally murdered like in 1996. So we're here like 20 or so years later. He has now made a podcast because he believes that an innocent man was sent to prison for the murders of his 2 best friends. So he is out to find out what really happened, basically. We also follow Jess. Jess is the mother of one of the little boys that was murdered. So we get her point of view, and then we get Cody's point of view through his podcast. Like I said, really enjoyed the story as kind of Cody's like making his way through interviews and past files on the case. We also follow a detective. Very unlikable character, though. I really didn't like this detective. If you read it or you read it, you will know why. He was the one that did discover the boys back in 1996, and now he is reopening the case because of this podcast. And then of course Jess, there's some issues with Jess as well. So yeah, Cody is sort of just digging up the story, and there are some people out there that don't really want the story to be dug up again. But yeah, like I said, I wasn't really impressed with the ending, but overall, I had a good time with it. Next up, Confessions on 745. This is by Lisa Unger. Really enjoyed this book. This is my first Lisa Unger, like full-length novel, Lisa Unger. I read a very short story that she did and was super impressed by it and had said I need to pick up more of her. So we get a lot of point of views from this story, which I love. I love getting like different characters' point of views, but sometimes it can be a lot. But this one played out pretty easily to follow, especially the further you get into the book, then you realize where all these different point of views are coming from. But we mainly follow Selena. Selena is a wife and mother, seems to have like the perfect life. She misses one of her trains to go home, like the early train, I believe. So she gets on the 745 and she encounters a young woman who decides to tell her that she is sleeping with her boss. So Selena, for some reason, decides to confide in this woman as well and let her know that she believes her husband is sleeping with the nanny. And then the nanny goes missing. It's kind of all over the place. I don't really know how to explain it without giving anything away. But as the book slowly comes to an end, you get the picture. You get the picture of what's happening, and how all these characters are involved. I thought it was like very uniquely done. Very impressed with it. I did kind of feel at times that the story just kind of drug a little bit. Other than that, I really enjoyed this story. Very good narration with this book, 4 stars. And lastly, for the month of September, I actually finished this at the very beginning of October, but this is Bitter Falls by Rachel Kane. This is number 4 in the Stillhouse Lake series. Really, if you haven't read at least Stillhouse Lake, I very much recommend it. It was a really, really good story, and we're still following the same characters. It's just the stories have kind of progressed over the books. As like one story ends, we kind of, you know, dive into another story. Gwen from the first book is our character that we mainly follow in this book, but in Bitter Falls we're also following her partner Sam and her 2 teenage kids, I guess. So we're getting a little bit more perspective from this book, a little bit, you know, a little bit of point of views from each of our characters as what's going on. Gwen is now sort of a undercover investigator, and in this book she is investigating a cold case of a missing young man. He went missing one night out, I think he was at a college bar or something. I will say this does involve a cult in this book, but it's very well done. I've said before, it depends on how the cult is done. Sometimes I like them, sometimes I don't. As far as in a book, I don't like a cult at all. I think cults are terrible, but if the way they're written is sometimes I can't do them, and then sometimes it's very well done. There's not much on the cult in here, but it's definitely there. But yeah, I highly recommend checking out Stillhouse Lake so you kind of get to know Gwen before you jump into anything. I think this series does have to be read in order. I don't want to give any more away about this book, but it is a little bit more different than, say, the first 3 books. So I'm really not giving anything away because, like I said, this is like kind of a completely different storyline. But yeah, I think you need to get to know Gwen and what happened to her and her family to really understand where she's coming from in this book. But really enjoying the series, and there is a number 5, so I will eventually pick that one up too. I think I gave this book a 3.5 star, or 3.75. It's up there. I really did like it, but I did get a little bored with it somewhere in the middle along the way, but it was a good time. And I did listen to this on audio. I'm kind of all over the place with this book because I'm running out of time. I did listen to this on audio. The narration is awesome because we have a voice for all our characters, which I love. All right, now that is everything I read in dropping all the books, in the month of September. I had a really good month, even though it started off with a hurricane. But let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books, and let me know what you thought about them, what you're looking forward to reading. Thank you, as always, so much for watching and sticking around with me. Hope you're all doing well out there, staying safe. Hugs from me all around, y'all, and I will see you very, very soon in a new video. Bye, y'all.